I didn't expect this weekend to change anything between us, but somewhere deep down, I hoped it would. He was already waiting outside the cabin when I pulled up, leaning against the wooden railing with a smirk that tugged at the corner of his lips, that same damn smirk that always messed with my focus, whether we were studying, gaming, or just sitting in silence. His hoodie sleeves were pushed up to his elbows, showing those forearms he never intentionally flexed, but always managed to, anyway. I took my time getting out of the car, pretending to check the trunk even though I knew I had nothing else to unpack. It was easier than facing the way my stomach twisted every time I saw him after a long break. We hadn't done anything like this before, just the two of us. No group, no distractions. A weekend trip to the woods, something spontaneous he'd suggested when midterms ended, and somehow I'd said yes too fast. He waved me up with 2 fingers. "Took you long enough, city boy." I rolled my eyes. "You literally live 10 minutes closer than I do, and still beat you here. Must be fate." That was the kind of thing he always said, stupid, throwaway lines, never serious. But my brain latched onto the word fate like it meant something, like it wasn't just another joke. The cabin was cozy in a rustic, wood-smelling kind of way. Dust caught the last gold light of the afternoon, slanting through the windows, and everything felt still, isolated, quiet, safe. It was just the two of us, no one else. I swallowed hard. We'd been friends since freshman year close, but always with this unspoken border I never dared to cross. He was the kind of guy who made people feel like they belonged wherever he was. Magnetic, carefree, loud when he laughed, and surprisingly gentle when he thought no one was watching. And me, I was quieter. Not shy exactly, just more cautious. I liked books more than people. I noticed things and kept them to myself, like the way his voice softened when he said my name, or how he leaned a little too close when he was teasing me. Small things, stupid things, things that kept me awake sometimes, staring at the ceiling. Now, here we were, alone in this creaky old place, surrounded by pine trees and quiet sky. He kicked off his boots and tossed his backpack on the couch, like he owned the place. I lingered by the window, watching the wind sway the trees. "This weekend's gonna be fun," he said, plopping down and patting the cushion beside him. "We're doing absolutely nothing. Zero plans." I sat, careful to leave a bit of space between us. "I thought we were going hiking," he snorted. "That was just to convince you to come. No signal, no people, no classwork. Just vibes and bad cooking? Your cooking, you mean?" He nudged my thigh with his knee. "Hey, I've improved." I smiled despite myself. I always smiled around him. That was part of the problem. There was a pause, comfortable, but charged. I glanced over and found him already looking at me, not in a weird way, just watching, like he was waiting for something. "Feels weird, huh?" he said quietly. "Just us." I nodded, not trusting my voice. His gaze held mine a second longer than it needed to. Then he looked away, stretching his arms behind his head, his shirt lifting just enough to show skin. My eyes betrayed me before I could look away. I needed to get a grip. "I'm glad you came," he added. "Really." My chest tightened. Me too, and I meant it. Even if it hurt, even if I knew I was probably going to leave this weekend. The same way I came in, quiet, closeted, and in love with my best friend. Still, part of me wondered what if something did change. I still remember the first time we met. It was orientation week, chaotic, humid, and loud. I'd been hovering awkwardly by the snack table, pretending to be interested in the label on a granola bar, just to avoid having to talk to anyone. Then, he bumped into me literally, while juggling a plate of nachos and 2 sodas. "Whoa, sir. Didn't see you standing there, all mysterious and tragic," he'd said, laughing as he wiped salsa off my hoodie. I should have been annoyed, but instead, I laughed too. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. We clicked. Not instantly, but easily. He had this way of drawing me out without making me feel exposed. We studied together, skipped classes together, even signed up for the same electives, just to make things more bearable. Somewhere between late-night pizza runs and those quiet evenings in the library, he became my anchor. He always said we were cosmically cursed to orbit each other forever, usually while stealing my fries. I always rolled my eyes, but secretly, I liked the way he said we, like it was inevitable, like I belonged beside him now. Sitting beside him in that dusty cabin, I felt it again, that strange gravity. Like no matter how much I tried to stay grounded, I kept getting pulled into his orbit. He tossed me a granola bar from his bag chocolate chip. My favorite. You still eat these like you're on a 4th grade field trip, he teased already, halfway through his own. You still steal mine like you don't pack enough for yourself. Hey, I planned it that way. What's yours is mine. I raised an eyebrow. Even my socks. He grinned. Especially your socks. God, I hated how easy it was to fall into our rhythm. Banter like this wasn't new. It was our default setting, but here, without campus noise and deadlines between us, it felt louder, more focused. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and the air turned colder, we started unpacking our sleeping arrangements. That's when the first complication appeared. Wait, he said, frowning into his duffel bag. No way. I forgot my sleeping bag. I blinked. Seriously, I thought I packed it. I even rolled it up and everything. Let me guess. You left it by the door, he groaned. I hate how well you know me. I crossed my arms, trying not to let my pulse react to where this conversation might be headed. So what now? There's only one bed, and the couch looks like it hasn't been cleaned since the 90s. He looked at merely, looked at me. There was something unreadable in his expression for a split second before he masked it with a chuckle. Guess I'll have to share with you, unless you want to kick me to the floor. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him it was a bad idea. But instead, I forced a smirk and said, "Don't steal the blanket." Later, while setting up the bed, we kept brushing shoulders, fumbling over who would sleep on which side. He kept cracking jokes too, break the tension, but I could feel it thick and humming, just under the surface. At one point, he held up one of my old college hoodies. You still wear this? It's got that coffee stain from sophomore year. You spilled that coffee. Details. He tossed it at me, but I caught him staring again. We laid on opposite sides at first, awkward, silent, a wide canyon of almost touch between us. So, he said eventually, his voice softer in the dark. You ever think about how weird it is? How we've stayed close all this time? All the time, I admitted, my voice nearly a whisper. It's rare, yeah, but like, it's good weird, right? Yeah, I said, turning my head toward him. Really good. He was already facing me. His eyes caught the faint moonlight through the blinds. There was something open about him in that moment, guarded in a way I didn't often see. There was a pause. I held my breath. He shifted slightly, and our knees brushed beneath the blanket. Just a touch, but I felt it like a static charge all through my skin. He didn't pull away. I should have said something. I should have made a joke, changed the subject, anything. But all I could think about was how close we were, how the bed smelled faintly like cedar and his shampoo, how my heart was hammering so loud, I was sure he could hear it. Eventually, he turned back to stare at the ceiling. I think I like this, just being here, with you. Me too, I wanted to say, but the words stuck behind my teeth. Instead, I just whispered, same. Neither of us said anything else. But we didn't move apart either. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was uncomfortable, but because I was terrified I'd do something reckless like roll over and touch his hand, or tell him the truth, that I'd been in love with him for years, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could pretend otherwise. The next morning, we woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that hums with warning. I sat up first, rubbing sleep from my eyes, and glancing toward the window. A thick fog had settled in the woods, dense and white, swallowing everything. Past the porch, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. No signal. Of course. He groaned beside me, one arm flung lazily over his face. What time is it? Almost 8, I replied. And we might have a problem. He rolled over and blinked at the window. Damn, can't see a thing out there. We were supposed to hike the trail today. Not happening if we can't even see the trees. He yawned, not the least bit concerned. Guess it's an inside day. An inside day. With just the two of us. In a cabin barely big enough for a couch, a kitchenette, and one bed. Great. I tried to play it cool. We could read, or play cards or something. He perked up. We could wrestle. I gave him a look. We're not 12. You're just scared I'll win. You'll pull something and blame me for the rest of your life. Come on just a little. For old time's sake. He wasn't going to let it go. He never did when he wanted something. Back in college, we used to wrestle over the remote, over snacks, over stupid jokes that went too far. It was always playful, always towing some invisible line. But things were different now, at least for me. Still, I let him grab my wrist and pull me off the bed, laughing as he tackled me onto the old rug. The room smelled like pine wood and dust. His hands were rough but warm as he tried to pin me. My heart was hammering in my chest, but not from exertion. Say you surrender, he teased, leaning in close, breath fanning across my cheek. Never, I breathed, barely managing the word. We struggled, limbs tangling until I was flat on my back, his weight hovering just enough to feel it without fully pressing down. His hands caught my wrists, pinning them above my head. We were face to face, close enough to feel the warmth of his skin, the soft rhythm of his breathing. He paused. Neither of us moved. My pulse surged. His fingers tightened, just a little. His eyes searched mine, almost curious, like he was looking for something. Then I whispered, "Stop." He didn't move. Not right away. His gaze flicked between my eyes, then dropped just briefly to my mouth. My breath caught. "I'm not hurting you, am I?" he asked, softer now. I shook my head. He let go, sat back like nothing happened. "Sorry, got carried away." "It's fine," I said too fast. But it wasn't fine. Not really, because I could still feel where he touched me. My wrists burned where his fingers had been. My chest ached from the weight of him not being there anymore. It was all too much, and not enough. The fog outside didn't lift. By afternoon, we were still trapped. He tried making us lunch burn the grilled cheese, and blamed the pan. I laughed, even though every part of me was on edge. We sat on the couch afterward, watching some old DVD from the stack on the shelf. A low-budget horror film we barely paid attention to. His arm rested behind me along the back of the couch, casual, unbothered. But every now and then, his fingers brushed my shoulder, like he forgot where they were, like he didn't notice the way I stiffened every time. He shifted during one scene, some cheap jump scare, with a ghost in a mirror and his thigh pressed fully against mine. He didn't move. Neither did I. I kept telling myself not to read into it, that it didn't mean anything. But my thoughts were a mess, a tangle of want and fear and what-ifs. What if he feels the same? What if I ruin everything by saying something? What if this, whatever this is all I'll ever get? At one point, I excused myself to the tiny bathroom just to breathe. I splashed cold water on my face, stared at my reflection. "You're being ridiculous," I whispered to myself. "He's your friend. That's it." But the way he looked at me sometimes, the way his voice dropped when we were alone, the way he lingered. When I came back out, he was lying on the couch, one hand behind his head, the other patting the empty space beside him. "You disappeared on me, had to escape your terrible movie taste." He grinned. "You love my terrible taste." I sat, legs curled under me, putting just enough space between us to stay sane. But his fingers found the edge of my hoodie anyway, fidgeting with the fabric as we watched the screen flicker. "Hey," he said after a while, voice low. "You okay?" I glanced at him. His eyes were focused on the screen, but his fingers still tugged gently at the hem of my sleeve. "Yeah, why? You've been quiet." I hesitated. "Just tired, I guess." He didn't push, just nodded, but he didn't stop playing with my sleeve. Something in me cracked. "I've been thinking," I said quietly, unsure if I wanted him to hear. He turned to face me more fully. "About what?" I looked at his hand, at the space between us, at the thousand little moments I'd convinced myself didn't mean anything. "Us," I said. His expression didn't change, but his hand stilled. There was a pause, tense, silent, terrifying. "Yeah," he said finally. "Me too." I don't know what I expected him to say when he said, "Me too." Maybe I thought he was teasing again, turning my words into another joke. But he wasn't smiling. He looked quiet and careful, like he didn't want to scare something away. The TV kept playing in the background, some forgettable dialogue filling the silence between us. His fingers let go of my sleeve and folded into his lap. "What did you mean?" I asked finally, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me then, not with surprise, not with avoidance. Just there, present, locked in. His gaze lingered like he'd been waiting for this moment to show up, and wasn't sure if he was allowed to reach for it. "I meant," he exhaled, sat up straighter, "that I've been thinking about this, about you, about us, for a while." My stomach flipped. How long is a while? He laughed softly, not mocking, more like he couldn't believe we were finally doing this. "Long enough that I don't have an excuse anymore." I swallowed the knot in my throat. "So why didn't you say anything?" "I could ask you the same thing," he said, smiling faintly. Then, quieter, "I was scared." There it was, that word again. Scared. I nodded slowly. "Me too." Another pause, longer this time, the kind that asks for honesty, not more silence. He shifted on the couch, turning toward me, one leg folded under him. I didn't want to mess it up. We've had this, whatever this is, for so long, and it's always felt right. You get me, in a way most people don't. And I thought if I said something, it might go away. My heart beat faster with every word. He was cracking open, and I could feel my own defenses trembling too. "I've been holding this in," I admitted, voice trembling, "since sophomore year. Since that night we stayed up watching terrible horror movies and you fell asleep on my shoulder. I didn't want to ruin it." His mouth twitched into a sad smile. "You remember that night? Of course I do. I remember everything." He was quiet for a long moment. I think I knew. I looked up. "You did?" "I didn't know," he clarified. "But I felt something, like I'd catch you looking at me sometimes. Or we'd touch just casually and something would ... shift. And I felt it too. But I kept telling myself it wasn't what I thought it was, that maybe I just wanted it to be." His voice caught a little on that last part. He wasn't being performative, just honest, raw, and I could feel my chest tightening with everything I'd tried to suppress for so long. "I was scared too," I said. "Not just of ruining the friendship, but of you not feeling the same, of you pulling away, of being wrong." "You're not wrong," he said immediately, and his voice was suddenly firm, more sure. "You're not wrong." I looked at him, really looked, and in that quiet, dim cabin with the fog still outside, and nothing to distract us, it all landed at once. I was in love with him. I had been. Every shared joke, every stolen glance, every late-night phone call that lasted too long, all of it had been real, even if we never said it out loud. "You're the only person who ever made me feel safe," I said, "even when I was a mess, even when I didn't say much. You never pushed, you just stayed." His eyes shimmered, but he didn't look away, and it made me want more, I whispered, even when I told myself I couldn't. He reached out slowly, deliberately, and took my hand. His fingers were warm, mine were shaking. "I've wanted this too," he said softly. "I just didn't know if I was allowed to. I thought maybe you needed me to stay as your friend. That was all you had room for." "There was always room," I said. "I was just too afraid to open the door." He squeezed my hand. "Then maybe we open it together." My breath hitched. I couldn't stop looking at him. The way his eyes held mine. The way he wasn't smiling anymore. Not exactly, but his whole face was gentle, steady. "I don't want to guess anymore," I said. He leaned in, just slightly. "Me neither." There was a suspended moment where time went quiet, and the only thing I could feel was the pulse in my fingertips and the air between our mouths. Then he kissed me. It wasn't a perfect kiss. We both hesitated at first, meeting halfway, and bumping noses and laughing nervously into each other's breath. But then his hand slid up to cup my cheek, and mine found his shirt, tugging him just a little closer, and everything softened, deepened. It felt like everything I'd been holding, in fear, longing, hope, spilled out all at once, and I felt it in him too. The way his fingers trembled just slightly, the way his lips lingered against mine like he wasn't sure how to stop. When we pulled apart, neither of us spoke right away. We just stayed close, our foreheads brushing, breathing in sync. "I feel like I've been waiting for that forever," he murmured. I nodded, eyes still closed. "Me too." He shifted, wrapping an arm around my waist and tugging me into his chest. I curled against him without thinking, burying my face in the crook of his neck. He smelled like cedar and fabric softener, and something undeniably him. "Is this real?" I whispered. He held me tighter. "It's real." I stayed there, heart thudding against his ribs, his fingers gently tracing circles into my back. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to do anything except hold on to the moment we finally stopped pretending. Eventually, he spoke again. "So what now?" "We figure it out," I said. "Together." He pulled back just enough to look at me. "You're not scared?" "I'm terrified," I admitted, laughing softly. "But not of you. Not anymore." His eyes searched mine. "Can I kiss you again?" "You never have to ask." This time, it was slower, more certain, less about nerves, more about feeling. And when we pulled away, our smiles finally matched. There was still so much we hadn't figured out. What this meant for us, how we'd handle it when we left the cabin and the world came back. But for now, in this quiet little place, surrounded by fog and memory, we had each other, and that was enough. We didn't leave the couch for a while. There was no rush to move, no need to explain what had already been said between quiet touches and soft kisses. The fog outside hadn't lifted, but it didn't matter anymore. For the first time, in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. He rested his chin on top of my head, and I could feel the low rumble of his voice against my temple when he finally spoke. "So, does this mean I can start introducing you as my emotionally repressed boyfriend who took forever to kiss me?" I huffed out a laugh against his chest. "Only if you want to be known as the smug idiot who forgot his sleeping bag and used it as a ploy to cuddle." He pulled back just enough to raise an eyebrow. "Wait, are you saying you wouldn't have cuddled me otherwise?" "I'm saying you're not nearly as subtle as you think." He grinned. "Okay, fine. I might have forgotten it on purpose, just, to see what would happen." I rolled my eyes. "You're ridiculous. You're in love with ridiculous." I didn't argue, because he was right. The shift between us wasn't dramatic. It didn't feel like crossing some forbidden line. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for too long. He held my hand without hesitation now, laced our fingers like it was second nature. And I didn't flinch anymore when his thigh brushed mine, or when his gaze lingered longer than it used to. I welcomed it. Later that afternoon, we curled up on the bed, not because we were tired, but because it gave us an excuse to stay close. His arm was draped around my shoulders, and I leaned into his side, feeling his breath move in sync with mine. "Do you think this will be weird when we go back?" I asked, not looking at him. He was quiet for a beat before answering. "I don't know. Maybe a little. But I'd rather face the weird than go back to pretending this wasn't real." I turned to face him. "It is real, right?" He nodded, brushing his knuckles across my cheek. "Yeah, very real." We lay there in silence for a while, the kind that didn't feel heavy anymore, just full of possibility. "What about everyone else?" I asked eventually. "Our friends, your sister, the people who don't really know this side of me?" He didn't hesitate. "We tell them when you're ready. No pressure, no timeline, just us." You set the pace. Something inside me softened even more. "You'd really wait for you," he said, brushing his thumb along my jaw. "As long as it takes." The sincerity in his voice undid me. I turned into him and kissed him again, slower this time. Deeper, not like the first tentative spark, but like a promise starting to take shape. Afterward, he pulled the blanket around us and buried his face in my shoulder. "Okay," he mumbled, voice muffled. "But now, I get to ask my important question." I raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" He peeked up at me with mock seriousness. "Does this mean I get to steal your hoodies now without it being weird?" I groaned. "You already steal them?" "Yeah, but now I get boyfriend privileges, like hoodie theft immunity. I should have kissed you sooner just to put you under contract." He laughed and pulled me closer. "Too late. I'm your problem now." We stayed like that as the light began to shift outside, the fog thinning into something almost golden. He talked about the future in a way that didn't feel far away anymore. About weekend trips, shared playlists, mornings spent cooking badly and falling asleep in the middle of movie marathons on purpose. "Even if this gets hard," I said quietly, "I want it. I want you." He met my eyes, all the playfulness fading into something steady. "I've always been yours." We didn't need anything else, not right then. The world could wait a little longer. The fog lifted the next morning. It wasn't sudden, it peeled back slowly, like the sky was waking up too. The trees emerged in outlines first, then in full color, their needles glittering with dew. Everything outside the cabin looked freshly washed, clearer than it had when we first arrived. Like the whole world had shifted with us. He was still asleep, sprawled on his stomach beside me, mouth slightly open, hair sticking up at odd angles. I watched him breathe for a while, memorizing the quiet way his chest rose and fell, how his fingers twitched now and then like he was dreaming something light. It felt different now. Not heavier, but more real. The distance between us was gone, not just physically, but in all the ways that had mattered more. I wasn't holding back anymore. I wasn't wondering what if. I knew now. He stirred eventually, squinting at me with a sleepy smile. "You're staring. You drool a little when you sleep." He blinked. Lies confirmed. He stretched with a groan and buried his face in the pillow. "Can't believe you're roasting me first thing in the morning. We kiss once and you turn savage." I rolled onto my side, resting my chin on his shoulder. "You kissed me twice, actually." His eyes peeked open again. "Guess I'm not done yet, then." There was no awkwardness, no tiptoeing, just this quiet warmth between us, like we'd always been heading here, whether we admitted it or not. We made breakfast together, burnt toast and 2 strong coffee. He wore one of my hoodies, sleeves rolled up, humming some off-key tune as he cleaned the pan. I stole his mug without asking. He didn't complain. Later, while packing, I found a small Polaroid in the bottom of my bag. From our first year, we were sitting on a bench outside our dorm, both holding burritos and making dumb faces at the camera. My hand had been resting on his knee. At the time, it had meant nothing. Now, I realized I'd always been reaching toward him. He leaned over, My shoulder. Wow, that was the day you told me you'd never had a burrito before. I lied to impress you, he laughed. Why would anyone lie about burritos? You were obnoxiously confident about yours. I panicked. He took the photo gently from my hand, staring at it. We didn't know anything back then, and now here we are. I looked at him. Here we are. He set the photo on top of my bag. We should take another one, start a new pile. A new pile. Yeah, one picture every month, or trip, or kiss. Just something to keep. I liked that idea. I liked the thought of building something with him, something real and imperfect and entirely ours. We took that new photo right before we left, standing on the porch, the sky behind us bright with possibility. His arm around my waist, my head against his shoulder. Both of us smiling like we knew what came next, because we did, in the car. He reached across the center console and laced his fingers with mine without saying anything. I squeezed his hand once. He squeezed back twice. It became a quiet language, one we wouldn't need to explain to anyone else. As we got closer to the city, I glanced over at him. He was watching the road, nodding along to some song on the radio, but his thumb was still tracing circles on the back of my hand. I don't want this to be just a weekend thing, I said. He didn't even hesitate. It's not. I mean, when school picks up again, and life gets messy, I'm still going to want you. He looked over. Every day, mess and all, that hit harder than I expected. You're really not scared. Oh, I'm terrified, he said, smiling. But not of us. Just of how stupidly happy I already am. I laughed, and it caught me off guard how easy that joy came now. How unguarded it felt. He looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw the promise but certain that this was the beginning. Not a fluke, not a detour, a start. When we pulled into the city, he leaned over and kissed my cheek just before the car stopped. You know, he said, if anyone asks, I'm telling them I won you in a wrestling match. I rolled my eyes. They're going to think, we're 12. They're going to think I'm lucky. I turned to him. You are. So are you, he whispered. We sat there for a second longer, just soaking it in. Then we got out, bags slung over shoulders, hands brushing, as we walked toward our apartments. He bumped into me on purpose. I bumped him back. Nothing had changed, and everything had. And somewhere, deep down, I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but it would be worth it. Every fight, every laugh, every stupid photo on the wall. We'd figure it out, together, always.